Guys, absolute gut punch there at the end of the night. Minnesota loses to North Carolina. Walk-off field goal attempt, wide right. Just a brutal, brutal way to lose a game. The kicker for Minnesota has been a guy that has had like decent seasons. You know, this is somebody that was coming back from last year. Big, strong, powerful lefty kicker, has an NFL leg, but tonight, I mean, missing a 25-yarder is inexcusable for a veteran kicker. And then Minnesota at the end of the game, they didn't really show urgency there to get the spot perfect for the kicker. It was kind of out of control, but still, the running back was able to get some yards. Zach Brosmer really executed there when he was under the gun in the final 2 minutes. And really, the final two drives from Brosmer, they kind of let him roll a little bit, and he got into a rhythm. You know, he was able to lead them all the way down to the 9-yard line. He's a very accurate passer. He doesn't have the biggest arm in the world, but he's very accurate. Like, he was putting it on the right shoulders of the wide receiver. So when the defender, when the linebacker, when the corner's coming in zone coverage, Zach Brosmer was pinpoint accurate there down the stretch, and he was huge. He was big time. You know, he was better than Athan Kaliak-Manis. You know, he was better than the quarterbacks that Minnesota have had since Tanner Morgan. Now, Tanner Morgan created more explosive plays. Tanner Morgan probably wouldn't have fumbled there. I mean, that was a huge play in the game. Minnesota's up 16-14, I want to say. 10 minutes left in the game, trying to go down the field and ice the game, or trying to get a touchdown to get another lead. He has a good throw out of the end zone, but then he fumbles. He falls, he fumbles. It was a good play by the defender, but still a costly turnover. You get that turnover, you have the missed field goal, and the offense was putrid in the third quarter, and in the first quarter, it wasn't good at all until that interception really turned it around. So defensively, Minnesota executed defensively. Max Johnson is not a very good quarterback for college, and I don't think pro-wise either. And here's the thing is that I feel terrible for Max Johnson, that he ended up tearing up his knee. All right. He's a great kid from Oshani, Georgia. His dad's a Super Bowl champion. His brother was a very good tight end for Texas A&M. He's probably still playing football there. He's an all right quarterback at best, you know, kind of average. It's horrible what ended up happening to him. Terrible. My prayers go out to Max Johnson tonight. He ends up tearing his knee out, and then North Carolina has an inexperienced quarterback that comes in the game and does like an admirable job, like makes like one throw, seems like a dual threat, seems like a running quarterback, all right, somebody that is very athletic, but they're going to have Chip Lindsey and that team's going to have to get that quarterback up to speed. The defensive line of North Carolina was really the story of this game. I mean, North Carolina has absolute NFL. They have absolute studs, and they bullied Minnesota tonight up front. Bullied them. And it was very uncomfortable for Minnesota, and I think that they let Brosmer go too late. Couple of plays that come down to this game. The turnover, the fumble, the 52-yarder. I mean, North Carolina, the special teams wins a game this tight. But why is a game this tight? Why is a game this tight when Minnesota's defense is lights out? It's because Minnesota doesn't have a Tyler Johnson. They don't have Rashad Bateman. They don't even have Dylan Wright. They don't have a A1 college or NFL wide receiver on this team. I mean, I guess Brockington is a decent receiver, but they have no alpha 6'2 or 6'1 absolute beast. And there's so many wide receivers. You know, you could go out and get speedster receivers like PJ Fleck. You're a wide receiver coach. You should want to go recruit the best wide receivers, and you should have a very good passing game. You got to have some explosive plays if you're going to win football games, especially with how good offenses are. I hate to say this. I hate to say this, but your defense has to be so great to win a football game, but even teams that don't have great receivers, could still have an explosive play. Like you look at all the championship teams, they have quarterbacks and receivers. And I hate to say in today's game, because in the past you needed it too, but in today's game, like it's paramount to actually be able to throw an explosive play. Like last year, the furthest pass play Minnesota had was 39 yards. They didn't have a 40-yard pass all season long, even in a busted coverage moment. So, the point is, if this field goal goes in tonight, Zach Brosmer was tough after that fumble. Let's call it how it is. He managed to actually break break a tackle of a sack, get down there, and Zach Brosmer actually fought for a first down. Brosmer used his legs, and then Brosmer, when he was in rhythm, he would have a couple of seconds of protection. The ball would come out. Minnesota found something. Now, you got to get more checkdowns. Again, this was the first run through, and you went up against a defensive front that is freaking nasty. That's salty. That's great. Jeff Collins there could really do a good job with North Carolina football. Now, boy, oh boy, looking at Minnesota, the weaknesses, you have Matt Simon, you have Harbaugh Jr., I don't like the play calling on offense. That screen pass, guys, 2nd and 9 after, the fumble, you get a very fortunate break where the fumble happens to fall into the lap of the wide receiver of Minnesota. They get down there to the 9-yard line. You're down 2, a touchdown with that backup quarterback, with your defense. You really feel comfortable you're going to go win the game. 1st and goal on the 9, have the momentum, call a pass play, call a back shoulder throw, and decent play call. Receiver slips, almost had a touchdown. Pretty safe, accurate throw by Brosmer in that scenario. Spencer, the receiver, falls down. Then you go right up the gut with a run, because I guess North Carolina is expecting a run. Everybody in the stadium, and it wasn't even a stretch run either. It's right into the teeth, and you're not getting really anything. I know in the first half you were able to get something through the A gap, through the B gap of that defense, but that defense was stout, ready for it. Terrible call. And then on 3rd down, you played scared. You didn't play to win the game. And it's classic Minnesota offensive football, where they don't even throw it in the end zone. They don't even let a play develop. A broken screen play that had zero chance of working, and it wasn't even completed anyway. So just putrid play calling. There's zero explosive plays. It's not like Garrett Wilson. It's not like Chris Olave is going to magically show up in this roster. And they don't have tight ends to throw the ball to. They don't have really wide receivers. Every team, even crap teams, have wide receiver play. And that's the frustrating thing, is that Minnesota actually developed through the lines of scrimmages, and receivers you can pay with NIL. You need to become a more explosive offensive unit. Like PJ Fleck, he wants to control the game and make it so tight, have his fingerprints all over the game, run the ball, use clock, play really clean. But I don't like that. I don't like these 12-play drives. That's not my philosophy, to play super clean at all times, because your margin for error is so slim. And even when your defense plays tremendously, you got to play a perfect game. Your special teams has to be great, and it was abysmal tonight. And then that turnover by Brosmer and really poor blocking. North Carolina won the trench battle, but Minnesota, the reason that they won this game was, defensively the secondary was phenomenal. Or the reason why they could have won and why they had a field goal chance to win is Zach Brosmer outplayed both quarterbacks in North Carolina. Brosmer late was fantastic. North Carolina's defense kept it in, and then Brosmer was certainly good enough to win tonight. And that is why it's a devastating loss. It's a devastating loss in a lot of ways. It's year 8 for Fleck, coming off of a 4-8 year with a putrid offense, kind of breaking in now, going back to Harbaugh Jr. and Matt Simon leading the offense here. And if they would have won this game, they would have been likely 3-0. They're playing Nevada at home. They're playing Rhode Island at home. They would have been 3-0. And then Iowa's offense is probably not going to be that good good with Cade McNamara. You beat Iowa last year. You're going to have a really good chance. That spread would probably be about, I think Iowa would maybe be like, if Minnesota was undefeated, it would be a 3-point line. Now it's going to be a 4 or 5-point line. So that Iowa game's everything. And if you lose that, you're 2-2, and then you're playing USC and Michigan. You're looking at the season could practically be over by October. But if you would have won tonight, you would have probably been at worst 4-2. You would have been 3-0, and then you have the 3 tough games. You could have been looking at a world of like 5-1 or 4-2, and now 4-2 will have to be almost a miracle. So for Fleck, this kick, this game, I mean, it showed the growth of Brosmer, but again, we're not going to talk about that. The defense from Heverens, the new defensive coordinator from Rutgers, happened to be fantastic in this game. So calling blitzes, being very aggressive. It's ironic because defensively they're aggressive, offensively they're not. And then, you know, I look at Brosmer. If Brosmer could stay healthy, and I guess that's an if because tonight it looked like his knee wasn't, it looked like he was kind of stiff in the pocket. If they don't protect, it could be tough. They're going to go against Michigan. They're going to go against tough teams. But really, they got to develop wide receiver, and they got to get wide receiver right. And just like Penn State doesn't really have wide receivers either, you got to get weapons right now if you're Minnesota. And it's ironic because like Sam Pittman, the offensive line is not very good, and maybe PJ Fleck's like, okay, I could take these guys that are not the most talented receivers, but I'm such a good receiver coach that I'm going to make these like C- receivers end up being like B+ wide receivers. There are no dynamic guys that are going to win against the top level of competition that you play. And if you add one dynamic wide receiver, you win. You know, if you add a 50-yard ball from Zach Brosmer and this guy breaks tackles and you end up, you know, going to the house on one of these plays, you know, you beat North Carolina and you win. I mean, the game is simple. If you throw it to a receiver, he breaks a tackle, you need game-breaking explosive plays. An explosive play means like a game-changing play, or it means a play of like over 20 yards on offense, either running the ball or throwing the ball. And you need these explosive plays. You know, tonight I watched, you know, Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, like they threw for 450, won the game, even though their team is not as buttoned up, and they're not even as good as Minnesota. Like Minnesota has the pieces to the pie. They have the O-line. You have some defensive players. They have an absolute foundation, but you need the icing. And then tonight, part of your foundation broke. You turned the ball over. The kicking game was usually your foundation, and it lost you the game. 2 missed field goals, including a 47-yarder right there to win the game. And North Carolina dominated that aspect of the game, and then North Carolina's defensive line. So incredibly disappointing, heartbreaking game. Man, that kick, I mean, I wanted that kick to go down so badly. I had a decent night other than that personally in terms of teams and picks winning. That one just will sting. That will sting. Now you have 2 games that, frankly, no one's going to give a rat's you-know-what about in Nevada and Rhode Island. No one's going to care. No one's going to care. If you win those games 40-6, both of those games, no one will really care. But then it's back to Iowa. That might be a noon Fox game. I don't know when they're going to kick that game off. But, I mean, the reasons for optimism are that the defense and the defensive coordinator, like, look solid. They play fast. They're playing, like, typical, really good Minnesota defense, just like we saw against Nebraska. Now, the physicality, again, could it wear down a team like Minnesota throughout a year? Maybe. How's the depth going to be, too? That's why the defense played beautifully tonight, and for them to not win is very unfortunate. Zach Brosmer in the fourth quarter had 2 really nice drives and was excellent, and, you know, should have won the game. Maybe he should have, you know, threw that ball higher. Maybe he should have had a touchdown the second to last drive. But this is a game that Minnesota gave away. The field goals, the inability to run the ball. This was one of those flip games that you look at in a college football season, and we're going to look back on this game, and unless they beat Iowa, if they win these next 3 and beat Iowa, the season's back. And it's very possible to beat Iowa, but now Iowa becomes like a must-win game. And then they play USC, which will be fascinating. You have to run it at USC. You're going to have to play a completely different game. And then they go to Michigan. And then I think that your schedule gets lighter, excluding Penn State, the rest of the year. So looking at an 8-4 year, if you would have won this game, 9-3 was in the cards for Minnesota. But right now, the record that you're staring at most likely is probably 6-6, 7-5. That and then if you go 5-7, Fleck is gone. So, I mean, this game is going to set a ripple effect for Minnesota football for quite a while. So let me know what you all think, Minnesota fans in the chat. North Carolina, again, defense is salty as all heck. You need an actual quarterback. And again, you have a decent foundation there in terms of recruiting. You're recruiting real talent there on the defensive side of the ball. All right. Take care, guys.